Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to episode 44 of the ESG Show. Now, things could be a little bit tense today because two of our guests on the ESG Show today are from the Netherlands and two are from England. And it looks like we're probably going to be playing each other in the next round of the Euros. So hopefully we can get through all that and we can have a nice civilized conversation about the fascinating topic of polarities. Now, this is episode 44 of the ESG Show. And since we launched just over a year ago, we've had 96 different guests. And you can actually see a recording of every episode we've done so far on YouTube. And also, I have put a link to that in the comments section to the show. So if you look at the comments and you scroll to the top, or might be the bottom, not quite sure which way it is, you'll see that link. Now, all this means there's roughly 44 hours of incredible content out there. And I would love to think that after the show, you will all go home and spend the next 48 hours or so stopping only for food or the bathroom, watching every episode back to back. But I have this funny feeling not that many of you will be doing that. So I've been beavering away, breaking down past episodes into the most interesting clips, and I've teamed up with Knowledge Hub so you can watch the clips. They're all ordered around a user-friendly menu and in combination with a shed load of other content, including white papers, articles, and something called Ask the Expert. And once again, there is a link to Robin to the Knowledge Hub in the comments section accompanying this event. This is an ongoing project. There's a lot of content that I'm adding all the time, so please bear with me while I'm doing that, but please do check it out. So today's show is about polarities. And Albert Einstein is alleged to have said, the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. I say alleged as a question mark of whether he actually did say that, but it's the kind of thing he would say. And then Socrates is supposed to have said, the more you know, the more you realize you know nothing. Although, since he never wrote anything down, we don't really know he said that, but it's the kind of thing he would have said. Today's ESG show is about polarities. And I guess there are two elements to this. What are polarities? What do they have to do with business? And a bit of philosophy on the nature of knowledge. And then some examples. And I started with my points about the supposed quotes from Einstein and Socrates to illustrate a truth. Sometimes there is nuance. A bad thing is not always bad. A simple example is fossil fuels. It has become commonplace to see fossil fuels as the cause of all our ills and companies that exploit them as the embodiment of evil. But without fossil fuels, we would still be living in caves. No, strike that. Without fossil fuels, we might still be living in the trees. So that is one priority. But I do think we often make the mistake of looking for simple answers to complex problems. I also happen to think that the biggest mistake we can make as we get older is to assume we have gained wisdom. We can get wiser, and if we have learned that things are complex and no simple answers exist, I do at least think we have become wiser, but not necessarily wise. Take COVID as an example. I think that in Britain in the early days of the pandemic, there was a lot of cynicism, but I also think that cynicism has returned. 61 million people died of COVID, or so I read. No idea how many people had long COVID, but most of us, I don't think many of us actually know anyone who died from it. And we certainly don't know if we know anyone that got long COVID. Not many of us do anyway. And I think that has created a degree of cynicism. Others say that the youth had to make a sacrifice to help the very old people live a little bit longer. Now, I don't want to get into that debate, but I do have a concern that should another pandemic emerge, which is even more serious and deadly than COVID, I think it would be that much harder to impose lockdowns. And what I think is missing from the debate is a lack of willingness to consider nuance. And yet I kind of get it as well. If authorities took a calculation that lockdowns would save lives both directly and indirectly by reducing pressure on health services, then they couldn't really afford to blink. They could not show doubt. It's a little bit like that in warfare. You know, if your country is at war with another country and your leader turns around and says, well, you know, there are both sides to this argument. I understand the other's point of view, but on balance, we think we are right. then they're not going to get much support for the war effort. So sometimes you have to be definitive. So maybe we need certainty and confidence to disguise doubt as a matter of survival, or maybe appreciating nuance takes us on the first step to enlightenment. Anyway, let's meet today's guests. And on the show today is Renée Smits. Hello, Renée. How are you today?
Hello. I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well. Fully recovered from the Netherlands football last night, I hope.
Let's really not get into that.
All right. Okay. I won't go there with you. So Renée Smits is a COP28 speaker, international experience, sustainability expert, banker, and sustainable entrepreneur. She integrates nature, local economy, research, reforestation, and education to create profitable and tropical ecosystems. So, Renée, tell me, you were telling me on the phone when we spoke a few weeks ago that you were brought up in the rainforest. That must have been quite the experience.
Yes, it was. And I think for a long time, I didn't even know how special that was actually. It's really weird to grow up in between a Western world and also having the experience of the rainforest. But I think my parents always value to make us see and experience different types of living, cultural things, but also nature aspects. And I think like you can't really not do that when having a technical engineer as a dad and a nature scientist as an uncle. So yeah, but in the end, by now it makes me really grateful to have that experience. Definitely.
Okay, thanks for that, Renée. So Renée will be joining us again in a couple of weeks' time when we discuss ESG and decision making, and again later in the summer when we talk about the business case for the rainforest. So that should be good. Also on the show today we have Anita. Hello, Anita.
Hello,
you are joining us
everyone joining.
You're joining us from the hot UK today, I think.
Exactly. Increasingly hot, it seems. But that's obviously going to be something we're going to pick up on.
Indeed. So Anita is a qualified ESG professional with a master's in global governance and ethics. Her experience spans the not-for-profit, public and private sectors. She was interviewed by the BBC and CNBC during the global pandemic as a non-executive director and deputy chair of the Institute of Risk Management. As the founder and chair of the IRM's ESG group, she's now focused on thought leadership in support of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So, can you tell me a little bit about the Institute of Risk Management,
right.
Anita?
Thank you, Michael. We're a professional membership body of over 8,000 members across the world and all different sectors. We provide qualifications, training, thought leadership, and as well as the ESG group that I founded. We've got a whole array of different groups touching on so many of the themes that we're talking about. And we've specifically got a risk and complexity group as well. And we've been providing guidelines, which will come out shortly, to look at just some of the topics we're talking about, the complexity of decision making in relation to these broader issues that organizations really need to take into account in their own governance. And we're based on sound principles and practice in risk management. There's a lot of jargon and hype in relation to this because we've got qualified risk professionals. Everything is based on sound principles and practice. And if you're interested, head over to www.theirm.org for more information.
Okay, thanks for that. Maybe you could just do, when the show's finished, you could put that URL in the comments section. Sure. So people can look at it. Okay, well, thank you for that. So Anita, along with Renée, will be joining us again shortly. And also on the show today, we have Marcel. Hello, Marcel. I hope you too have recovered from the football last night.
Barely, but it's okay. We're going to play England in a few days.
Yeah, so I'm sure you'll beat. I'm sure you'll beat us. We're playing really badly at the moment.
We have to meet you anyhow, so better now than later in the whole.
Yeah, get it out. Get it out of the way. I'm just glad you don't still have Hullet and Dennis Burkamp playing for you. That's all I can say. But
That's a long time ago.
indeed. So Marcel founded the Flower Shop, a palm tree margarine, a palm-free margarine brand with a mission to help save our rainforests that are being destroyed for the production of palm oil. After Marcel had completed his studies at the Business School of Marketing in Rotterdam, he started his career. Is it ARA, BBDO? Is it ARA or is it ARA?
ARA, but it's a BBDO agency. That's a US-based chain of advertising agencies at those days.
Sure. Yeah, I'm familiar with BBDO.
Long time ago.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. He completed the international management program at BBDO and got promoted to account director in 1990. He emigrated to Indonesia in 1991 to head up the account department of BBDO, Jakarta. He also acted as an interim marketing director for Frisian Flag Indonesia. In 1995, he left Indonesia to work for J. Walter Thompson, there's a well-known name, as worldwide CSD in Colombo and Singapore before returning to the Netherlands in 1996. He worked freelance in advertising and founded a boat building company that specialized in classical wooden punts in 1998. He was asked by Linters in Amsterdam to become one of their managing partners. He sold his boat business and focused entirely on Linters. The merger with Low and subsequently Low International. 2005, he moved to McCann, Amsterdam. Is McCann, it's not called McCann Erickson anymore then? Is it just called McCann these days?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Actually, I don't know, to be honest, how it is today. But at those days, it was still McCann. Yeah.
So anyway, he helped reorganize the agency and left in 2007 with the intention to start his own agency. In February 2007, Marcel founded Alfred Advertising Amsterdam. Alfred became a leading Dutch agency with a strong focus on big ideas with a big audience. Marcel founded Mullen Low Alfred as an international advertising hub in Amsterdam, mainly for, and I think Unilever was one of your big clients. In May 2017, after 10 years acting as partner MD, Marcel decided to resign and rebalance his work and private life. Yeah, you mentioned Linters. I think Linters used to be owned by Unilever, didn't it, back a long time ago?
Yeah. Linters is short for Lever International Advertising Services. Linters.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, I didn't know it either. Yeah, but that's true.
So
that's even longer ago. You know that big companies took their own agency along while they were moving around the world.
I'm showing my age by knowing things like that, I suppose. So palm oil free margarine. That sounds pretty amazing. I guess this is a pretty unusual product. Is it unique? I've no idea.
Not anymore. But when we started it, yes, in the Netherlands, unique. In France, not always unique. And in Spain as well, there are palm-free options as well. But in the Netherlands, all margarines or spreads contain a lot of palm oil. So
okay.
So we had a good old-fashioned USP in our hands, you could say.
No, absolutely. And how's the flower farm going?
Yeah, it's going well. We are we're only there for a couple of years. So we started only 4 years ago, and but nowadays we are in the margarine sector, one of the bigger players. So that's cool, and we also entered other categories like peanut butter, like the the Nutella kind of spreads, the chocolate spreads and so forth, because also those products contain a lot of palm oil. And our aim is, of course, to avoid using palm oil and show the world, I would say consumers, but also companies, that you can also make lovely products without the usage of palm oil. So that's where we are now, and it's growing fast. So it's a very cool phase we are currently in.
Okay, thanks for that. Well, good luck. That sounds very commendable.
Thank you.
So I want to bring back all our other guests now, Anita and Renée. And in a moment, we're going to be looking at some media stories. But before we do that, I wanted to just introduce Polarities. And I actually saw an article, which I'm going to pull up in just a second. If you could bear with me. I meant to show a picture of the flower show when Marcel was talking. Sorry about that, Marcel, but here it is now.
Yep.
This is the piece on polarities. This is from the Harvard.org. And the author, Larry Clark, talks about how polarities are everywhere because we live in a complex world. In business, centralization versus decentralization, or growth versus profit maximization, are common examples of polarities, he says. In life, think work-life balance, or liberal versus conservative. Natural tension exists between the two. That will always be there. It's an attribute of the system, but says we humans are uncomfortable with that tension. And he has solutions for leaders. In fact, you've got three sort of headlines, really. Surfacing tensions. So he says, surround yourself with people of varying, even opposing views, which is something I would kind of agree with. I think that's why I'm a big fan of diversity, really. I think it's very important to surround yourselves with people different from you, embracing the tensions and processing the tensions. So I just wanted to have your thoughts, guys, not necessarily on that, but just in general on polarities. Maybe on that, I don't mind. Who wants to kick off?
I think Renée came up with the idea. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
I definitely can kick it off. I think it's exactly what the piece says as well. It's about the nuances. And if we're talking about polarities, and especially when talking about complex topics like sustainability topics, it has so many different sides that you have to consider. And for that, you need to know the nuances. You need to know the polarities of the subject you're actually discussing. And if you don't, or you're just seeing it from one part of it, then you're just missing a lot of information and you're heading a direction without actually understanding why you're doing that. So I think it's really important to talk about the polarities and also talk about our disagreements in those polarities. But it all starts with understanding. And I really like, if you look at it in a philosophy way, like it is philosophy. It's just seeing the same thing differently.
Okay. Anybody else want to come in on that? Marcel, do you want to have
Okay. Polarities.
Yeah.
I think polarities is a result of let's say simplifying a lot of issues in this world, and I do understand Renée, but I believe that the reality is that people don't have the time or the focus anymore to really dig in issues, and then they go for the simple way out, and that creates a lot of polarities. You can see that happening in politics, of course. In the US, very good example. In the UK as well, by the way. But you can see it. You can see it everywhere. People simply don't take the time or the effort anymore, or live in their own bubble, which is another interesting thought. You know, they live in a right-wing bubble or whatever bubble they are living in. So, and that creates a lot of force against each other, and that's what I call polarities. So, I wish the world was like Renée, let's say, talked about, but I think it is. The reality is that we are moving away from that, and that's of course very sad.
Okay, Anita.
Well, first of all, I'm really glad to be participating in this conversation because I've thought about little else since first, Michael, you put the topic to us, and
well, there you go.
I agree with everything, and I think that is the essence of what we're talking about. I agree with Renée and I agree with Marcel. Renée in terms of more the normative way in which we need to think about the challenges that we're facing and also the solutions, but also Marcel in terms of the practicalities of changing from where we are, from the status quo as we see in certain organizations, to the reality of bringing about change. And in that, the nuances, the difference between what organizations say they're going to do and what they're actually going to do, and the tangible difference they can make. And for me, the penny really dropped in this conversation was when we pull the viewfinder back away from any individual organization, any individual, any individual nation state to pull it back and say, let's look at it from a global perspective, because the nature of the challenges we're facing are global in nature, and we need global cooperation. So due to the complexity that, Michael, you've set out, simple solutions no longer will apply if we're looking at it in a collective. It's to some extent okay in an individual perspective, but no organization, no individual, no country can look at it from that individualistic perspective any longer.
Okay.
Can I comment on that?
Please do.
Because I agree. Again, I agree. But isn't it the case that we should simply go for the simple solutions and try to make things simpler in following actually what is happening in the world and following the let's say the insights that people want to go either left or right, make simple choices and simplify the let's say the complexity of, for example, let's say the sustainability issues, simplify that people understand and can choose for either A or B instead of the complexity of the issue, because I think we will never be able to explain the complexity of those issues.
Renée, did you want to come in, or?
No, you can go first.
Yeah, so this is where, Marcel, I think the conversation around your understanding in marketing and communication, this is a key point. Yeah. For example, in relation to the climate crisis, and it is now a crisis, for a long time it took us time to even talk about climate change and attribute man-made changes to climate change. So absolutely, in order to be able to communicate with so many different stakeholders, we do need simple messages. But underpinning those messages is the complexity and the nuance and the understanding of the interactive nature of the way in which society, environment, and economics interact.
Yeah.
I agree, like with both of you, but I liked when you said that, Marcel, aren't we making things complex? I think we make it complex. And by looking at it like it's something complex, we come up like we need innovations and we need to improve things. We need to come up with complex answers. But in the end, we need to go back to the basis, and that's keeping it simple. And for that, to me, goes back to the polarities, like understand what you're doing. And it is not black and white. It's always gray. And in one way, it can be a good thing. And in the other way, it could be a bad thing. It's just about understanding what's happening. But it is simple, indeed. It's actually quite simple if we go back to our origin.
Yeah.
Okay.
For example, we mentioned child labor. One of those things. You can talk about it in depth, but you can also say it's wrong. And that's a very simple statement, and that will create a lot of polarities, probably, but not so many, because I don't know many people who are pro, child labor. Mm-hmm. So that's such a simple example. It's just trying to feed a movement of yes, or trying to feed a movement of no, and make that big. But that's indeed a marketing point of view or a communication point of view, because the solution itself is very complex.
Absolutely, exactly.
Yeah. So I agree.
Okay, so we've had a comment. Normally, it's a bit magical, this tool that we use. The comments appear, and as if by magic, and I can make them appear on the screen. But for some reason, that's not happening today. So I'll have to tell you what the comment is. But we've had a comment from Michael Hagney, who actually says that the Dutch are better at this than the British, but he's particularly critical of the Scottish. He says in Scotland, alternative views aren't even welcome. Never mind opposing views. So there you go. Okay. Shall we have a look at some media stories? Anita, you spotted an article, luxury perfumes linked to child labour. That is your article, isn't it? That's
yes,
one.
It is indeed. Yes, thanks, Michael.
Can you tell me a little bit about this?
Yeah, just before I lose the point, Marcel, and in terms of communication, the image, that's what stays with me. In a couple of weeks' time, that's what I will remember. That child with the jasmine behind her. That it's also a question of how do we recall and remember the key messages. So in relation to this child, as it says there, her and her siblings picked jasmine through the night to help their mother make ends meet. So this article highlights to me the polarity between the wealthy who can purchase these luxury brands and the poor, the working conditions in the global north and the global south. So the crux of it is it's an illegal practice. Children under the age of 15 working in Egypt, picking jasmine through the night to help their parents make ends meet because they're either in poverty or at the poverty line. Now, the brands claim, as the article says, to have zero tolerance to child labor. But the wider picture is they're under pressure by civil society to recognize human rights. The article goes on to talk about squeezing budgets, that in turn resulting in low pay. It touches on the wider stakeholders, the landowners. It refers to power, the masters in the supply chain, which is a hierarchical supply chain. And it references this key role of third-party auditors and why hasn't that picked this up. So what I come away with in terms of this article is, in terms of the solutions which are complex, who are the decision makers in this? And do we need new decision makers in terms of handling the risks posed by child labor in complex hierarchical supply chains?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there nuance to the issue of child labor? I mean, are there circumstances in which, I mean, to give you an example, back in the days before we didn't do this much by internet, when it was the old-fashioned thing of putting letters in envelopes, I got my kids helping me stuff a newsletter into an envelope once. You know, we had about 1,000 envelopes to do, a load of leaflets and stamps and labels to be stuck on, and I got them all doing it. So, does that make me an evil employer of child slave? I mean, what's the nuance here?
First of all, presuming they were willing, they were not being forced into forced labor. The International Labour Organization defines child labor as participation in economic activity by underage persons, so 5 to 17, and other definitions have gainful employment of children below an age determined by law or custom, right? So we do have legislation and we do have ethical considerations in this. But again, to the point that Marcel's making and the foundation of the conversation we're having, what are the solutions? What do? Do you pull those children out of perhaps the only source of income that family has? These are the social dimensions to the problems, looking at what the current status is in terms of these supply chains and how do we really bring about change. And I think that brings another polarity in terms of the short term and the long term. How do we bring about change in the long term by perhaps changing our practices in the short term?
Okay, before I move on,
I think it's also that we as Western Europeans are, how do you say that in English, opposing countries to do it our way, I would say. And that's also not right. Because sometimes it is indeed a cultural issue, children going with their parents to the land to help pick fruits or whatever. Is that child labor, and who are we in Western Europe to judge that? But there is a difference between child labor and going with the family and helping the family out. And I think that's where this gray area is. But I think there's also another thing, and I just read yesterday an article in a financial paper here in the Netherlands that was about certifications. So you have law, but you also have certifications. In the palm oil industry, you have RSPO, for example, and in the fish industry, you have MCS, if I remember it well. And there's a lot of doubt nowadays on let's say, how true these controls with those certifications are, and that doubt was already there for a long time, but now it is officially doubted, I would say, and it was, in the national newspapers that people are, people simply do not trust that also anymore. So, what can you trust nowadays when it comes to child labor or, deforestation or wrong fishing or, all those, let's say, very important sustainability issues where people then, try to make up a sort of, it's sort of stamp we are doing well. But, what if the stamp is not well? So, and I think that makes it very complicated because that was a way to simplify it. Say, okay, if the stamp is there, everything is okay, but it's not. So when I read it yesterday, I was a bit worried about what's going on. But because who can you trust apart from the BBC?
I think that's spot on, Marcel. There are so many views and so many opinions about topics like this, and especially
Yeah.
child labor. We determine that it's child labor when it's an underage. But I was 12 and I was picking strawberries, and back then it was totally fine. I was earning something and I was completely happy because I could buy myself some things or I could have some savings. And
Yeah.
I think besides the cultural aspect that we're forgetting about, it's also some cultures or areas, they don't even have the possibility to send their kids to school, or it's just not close enough, or they don't have the financial support to do that. And then the only education they have is teaching their children how life actually works. And then the question is, what's more valuable? Is it the experience of spending time with your family, learning what it actually is to earn a living? Or is it going to school? Like, what is child labor? You have the obvious one that's like in bad conditions, working in factories. But is it child labor when I'm working in a farming family and I'm actually contributing by doing my part and learning from it? But we determine in the Western world that it's child labor because it's an underage and it's contributing to an economy.
Yes, but we're buying the products. We're buying these luxury products.
Yeah.
So there is a clear line between our purchase of these products at a price that has no any link with what the individual is being paid to pick the jasmine. So the value through the chain also goes to functions such as marketing, and Marcel will have views on that. So
Yeah.
to my mind, this comes to the polarity between working conditions in the global north and the global south, inequality between countries and within countries. And these are all matters that the UN Sustainable Development Goals seek to address. And in addition to trust, I think a key consideration is fairness. And is it fair? When you look at the working conditions, you look at the pay that even the numbers are there in terms of the article. How much are they being paid and how much is this product being sold for? And there's that disparity. I'll bring it back into the screen. So it's that big.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anyone come in on that point before we move on? Anything to add?
Well, that's definitely true, Anita. It's the difference is too big. But it also makes me wonder, and this is maybe a little bit off topic, but as well it's not. That makes me wonder sometimes who actually is the poor one in the end. Is it the one buying it or is it the one actually producing it? Because like to me, it sometimes feels we are the poor people because we don't value family bonding. We don't value having a life that actually contributes to something bigger.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
which one is
Yeah.
the one?
Well, this
No,
brings
Renée,
us.
but you're making the issue romantic now. I think a child working in a sweatshop in India somewhere is not a very romantic idea.
No.
They don't even know their parents anymore.
Indeed.
So I think that's what we are talking about. I guess apart from indeed what you were saying, and you see that a lot, in Indonesia or you see it in Africa. That families or let's say a whole community works together and age does not really matter. but in this case, there's a lot of wrong going on in these kind of conditions. Gold mines. What is it? All the stuff we
Cobalt.
need for our mobile phones. What is it called?
Cobalt.
It's cobalt. Yeah, I guess so. So those are really, really terrible conditions. I was in the palm oil plantations last month in Kalimantan. And it's all certificated palm oil, as they say. So no child labor, etc., etc., and no deforestation, etc., etc. Now, apart from the deforestation, of which I know that really there, I saw a lot of kids working there, and they were not family. They just came from completely different countries, even, and worked there. And you could see that those kids are 12, 13 years old, not older, but they are able to carry very big, palm oil fruits, and that's why they are there. And of course they are there because they don't get paid a lot, and that adds to the value of the chain. And I think when it comes to that, then I think it's wrong.
Definitely, it's definitely wrong. And I think, but do we need the rules to determine if it's child labor, or is it just common sense? Because no one would
I think for us,
an environment like that.
Yeah, but I think common sense in Europe is a different common sense than common sense in India or in Africa or in the Philippines or Indonesia. The common sense over there is different. They say, okay, this child can work. Yes, so let's go work. And and we have a different point of view on that. So
Yeah.
I think it's also a matter of who judges who. And if we judge everybody, then I think that there will be a change. But I think locally people are being judged on a completely different insight.
So
that's how I experienced it.
Yeah. So someone in the chat has suggested that I stop buying those products. I don't buy luxury brands. I've never gone for brands per se. I've done a lot of research more specifically around organic, but there are a lot of synergies between the brands that I buy in terms of organic produce and understanding broader environmental and social considerations. So organizations that are doing good. But to the point that the challenge that organizations face in assuming they want to do good is exactly to your point, Marcel, about the who can we trust, and we're increasingly seeing that this certification is not giving the assurance that we need in terms of good governance of organizations. So therein lies a problem, and we need to get to that. But I think more broadly, and the topic that we're talking about is bringing in a wider array of voices and speaking to people and understanding, to Renée's point, about actually what they want. What changes do they want? How can we take our short-term plans and turn them into long-term benefit because we understand what their real needs are?
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I think we need to move on. And Renée wanted to discuss an article in The Guardian. Renée, can I hand over to you to tell us what this is about?
It's a bit weird to say, but I kind of love this article. It has so many polarities in it. It's talking about how palm oil is destroying the environment for lots of the animal. And coming from a family where we make alternatives for palm oil and we do a lot of reforestation projects, many people will know my uncle from the orangutan rescue centers that he has and the projects that he does. So this is obviously a big problem, and it has been for the past 50 years that my family is active in actually preventing these things to happen. But what's funny in this article is they are outlining exactly the polarities about palm oil. Like, for example, when people talk to me, they're always like, oh, you must be against palm oil because my family makes alternatives to palm oil. But I'm not. I'm not against palm oil as a product. It's a good product. It has really high nutrition. It's really, it has so many uses to use it. The only problem with palm oil to me is that in the article, actually, it says it's a bit wrong because it says we are consuming more of something where it comes from, but it doesn't come from Asia. And the article is about Asia. Actually, a palm oil comes from Africa, West Africa. It comes from a desert environment. So if you put a desert organism in the rainforest, well, we can all, like, I think, calculate what that does. It will drain the soil. It will be overeating from the soil because it's not meant to do that. And that's destroying the nature because it doesn't belong in Asia. It belongs in Africa in the desert. But at the same time, the product itself, it's a great product. It's pretty healthy. It's really easy to use. It doesn't really have a lot of bad things that comes with it. Just the place where we started to produce it. And back then it was common sense to put it in Asia because it would grow in half the time it would produce double the harvest. But the longer we're in this problem and we're actually getting to know the polarities of it, it's like it's a great product and we want to have more of it, but we're just producing it the wrong way. Well, they're not even surviving the palm oils. So even that they're producing and we're harvesting from them and we're using them to a maximum in the wrong area, it's also bad for the tree itself because it doesn't belong there. And when it's overeating, it will die. So in all these kind of ways that you look at this topic, it's wrong. But at the same time, the product itself, it's right. So that's why I really love this article. And it also,
Yeah.
like, Marcel and I, we know each other obviously because of these topics. And I know that we are kind of on the same page, but we also have a different perspective when looking at these topics. So I had to bring in this article and also see. I wanted to see Marcel's reaction to this.
Okay, I will do. No, yeah. Well, thank you for bringing in this topic because it is a big topic, and I agree with you when you say, the polarities are there. There's one other thing which you did not mention. I think that's where the real problem lies, and that's money, economics.
Yeah.
Basically, why palm oil is growing that fast is because of the economics behind it. It is a over $100 billion business for Malaysia and for Indonesia. So it is part of it's something like 10% of their, NDP over, economics. So, and the usage of palm oil is not only the romantic things like, food and cosmetics and so forth. Mainly it goes into biodiesel. So,
Yeah.
and I think that's where the problem lies. It is indeed, it is a beautiful product, but it's also beautifully cheap, and it's also beautifully a lot, and it's also beautifully, how do you say that, reliable in their supply, that they can simply use it for everything, including being competitive to something horrible as diesel. And 50% of the whole production of palm oil goes into that direction. Not only cars, because that makes it even more romantic again, because then we can go from A to B, hippie hurrah. No, it also goes into, industry, heavy stuff. That's where a lot of palm oil goes to. So, and I think, and knowing that, is that palm oil is 3 times as bad in terms of CO2, etc., pollution and so forth, compared to normal diesel. So only, zooming into this biodiesel issue creates already a big polarity, because I think it's completely out of their mind to make it competitive to something which is better for the world. Even it's very, very bad, but it's better for the world than the usage of palm oil. So, and the reason behind this is money. And the money does not even go to the people. The money goes to the government partly, and the other half goes to the big companies like Indomie and whatever you call it, those big guys. And I think that's double wrong. That's another polarity. So, yes, palm oil is nice, but we have not compared it to the other, to the alternatives we did not develop yet, like going to algae, as we call it in Dutch. I don't know the English word for that, but it's the green stuff in the sea. There are a lot of other sources where we can create beautiful oils from without all those sustainability issues. So
definitely true. Yeah.
So I am, I'm against it. To simplify the issue again, I am completely against the production of palm oil. And I better be against it, because then at least it helps a little bit than trying to be a little bit pro. Because I cannot be a little bit pro with all those negative issues related to it. So that's where we have a different point of view, I guess. Yeah.
We do. And it's exactly what you said. It's about the money. And just to comment, I saw someone asking that they thought the palm was coming from Asia or from Indonesia.
Yeah.
Most of the palm oil we're consuming today is coming from Indonesia, but the palm doesn't belong in Indonesia.
I know.
Like that was what I was saying. Yeah, I saw one of the comments. Someone asked a question about it. And about what you said, it's about the money. Like one of your old customers, I'm not going to mention any names, they come to us because we make alternatives to palm oil. So I know there's plenty of alternatives. You just have a different approach to the product, and you have to use the ingredients a bit different. It's about knowing the product. But we actually have a lot of alternatives to palm oil that we're actually also producing.
Yeah.
And by producing them, well, one of your old customers, they reach out almost yearly asking us to buy the alternatives, but they're not willing to pay. And then we're coming back to also child labor, or even the right working circumstances, or having a fair pay. Like we refuse to pay it for less than what it's actually valued for. And we want to pay our people a normal and a fair pay. We're not going to do anything about that. We're not lowering our standards for that. So every year, and this is going on for the last 8 years, they reach out to us, but keep refusing because they want to pay only the price for palm oil. And I cannot have a fair product by asking that amount of money. It's too cheap. So to have a high value product, you have to pay for the quality you're getting. So it is indeed about money. And then at the end, they don't want to buy it because it's not cheap enough.
Okay.
But I agree. As long as the only reference is money, economics, and not quality, and not child labor, or not other, important parameters or KPIs, then you will always end up there. Then always palm oil, in this case of deforestation and palm oil will be, the measuring rod, or how do you say that in English? The measuring. So that's where they relate everything to the price of palm oil, and then you will never get there, because all the other products will cost, at least in the beginning, more than palm oil. We use shea butter, as you know, as an alternative, and when we started it was 6 times the price of palm oil. And of course, the big companies who produce spreads and margarines, they will not use that because, they have a different financial system behind. They cannot afford to buy those more expensive products instead of palm oil. And then you end up with this enormous amounts of palm oil. Yeah, that's the
So we're 50 minutes in now. There's an awful lot we could carry on discussing. Have you got 5 or 10 minutes? Have any of you got a dash imminently? I mean, can we carry on for a little bit longer, or does anyone need to fly?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. Well, if that's okay, this is such a big topic that I'm almost frightened to bring it up, really, because I have a feeling it's going to be a long conversation. But that's the issue of what I call group polarization. This idea that we live in an age in which there are such extreme views out there. And I've actually studied this in the past, and I believe that the psychologists are familiar with the phenomenon called group polarization, and they've done studies. And they said if you put a group of people who are mildly risk averse together in a group, then that group becomes paralyzed by indecision. And if you put a group of people together, or a number of people together who are mild risk takers, they put the odd bet on the horses every now and again, put them in a group and become reckless risk takers. And I think there's an evolutionary reason for that. I think it's because when we were hunter-gatherers, the survival of the group that we were in depended upon group cohesion. But I think in this era of social media, it's created this phenomenal difference of opinion, and you get these very extreme views. But I just interested in your take on this, guys. Marcel, why do you think why there are so many different, why do people interpret this information so differently and become so polarized in their views, do you think? Do you have a strong opinion about that?
Yeah, there of course there are a lot of reasons for that. Huh? I think that we live in smaller bubbles as what we did in the past. So we have, there's a lot of differentiation in groups. In the old days you had, in the Western world you had Catholics and Protestants, and that's basically it. And now you have all different kinds of, opinions, religions, way people live, way people think. So that's one. That will create a lot of fuss and a lot of differences, and not always very positive, I would say. Look at all the things are happening in the Middle East and so forth. And another thing is, money again, economics. People will judge different issues based on their own value, or it's simply about wallet. Upbringing, cultural issues that are also very different nowadays, and it's also open again. It's in the old days when I was young, it was hidden because there was no internet, there was no knowledge. If there was something happening somewhere in a different country, you could not hear about it for weeks or not even notice it. And now, in 2 minutes time, everybody knows about it. So that will create a lot of polarities as well. Doesn't make it easier for us, to zigzag between all those values, opinions, financial issues, information channels. Yeah. So
okay. It's interesting. I remember the day when you went on holiday and you got the newspaper 3 days later, and you could find out what happened 3 days ago in your home country. It's not like that anymore, is it?
And then you had to call home, with a phone on the street, with an operator, and now everything is there. It wasn't
such a long ago either.
Yeah, it makes it so difficult.
Okay. Anybody else want to come in on that point before we move on?
Yeah, I think you're exactly spot on by bringing this topic around polarities, and specifically we could extend it to talk about populism and what we saw in Washington at the height of basically groups protesting against what they perceive to be the elite and the ruling classes, and that tension that's come about, which I believe is as a result of the crisis that we're facing, cost of living crisis, inequality, the climate crisis. Increasingly, Greta Thunberg has cut through a lot of the political dialogue to emphasize the crisis that we're currently facing. So yes, but I think we should just think of them as views, albeit they may be coming from different groups. We need to listen to all of those views and understand collectively, globally, how we handle these problems. So we should not be overly concerned. They're reacting to situations that individuals find. Obviously, there's law and order, and where we're getting, I think another theme that you touched on, Michael, was around law and order and chaos. Then obviously, how do we go about finding solutions to these problems in these somewhat crisis situations? If in the face, we need something to build on, and we need law and order to provide a basis on which we provide security for individuals and a well-being. And to Marcel's point, we need to move away from this financial economic conversation only around finance and economy. It's part of a bigger picture, and that picture is more global.
Yeah.
Okay. We've had a comment, and it's nice to deal with questions when they do come in, from Rohit, coming back to the show after a long time. So it's good to have you back. And he asks, how is EUDR going to help reduce issues in the commodity industry? I'm currently working with the rubber industry and found a rating initiative called Spot. How relevant are these ratings? Does anyone have any comments on Rohit's questions? Or is that something that you perhaps don't know so much about?
I don't know anything about this Spot.
No, I confess, I don't either.
Sorry for
okay, that's all right. Sorry about that, Rohit. I'm afraid you've drawn a blank. You've drawn a blank there.
I could just throw my 2 pennies worth. In terms of these accreditations and ratings, they're one part of the picture. They're part of an ongoing process to bring about change. But as we've discussed in terms of reliability and trust in them, I think they have a place. And it's good to see that legislation and regulations are catching up. But in some cases, they are catching up. And the nature of the change that we need is far more radical. So it's only one component.
Okay, we had a comment earlier by someone wanting me to put the link to the Guardian article in the comments section so they could read it, which I've done. So I did that a few minutes ago, so that's there. Okay, so do we need to reframe the conversation? Do we need to change in mindset, do you think? Anita, you're nodding your head.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. We need to pull the viewfinder back. We need to look beyond the organization, individual organizations, individual nation states. We need to pull it back and have a broader perspective around some of the global challenges that we collectively face. That's not to say that exactly as we've pinpointed that the answer lies in greater local action, local conversations, local perspectives, and dependency on local produce as one example.
Okay. Marcel, Renée, do you want to come in on that point?
Definitely. I agree. We are in need of a change of mindset, especially. And I think for a business perspective, for example, like sometimes you have to be radical, Marcel, as you obviously know, to get things moving. But just please know what you're talking about. Start by understanding the polarities, by understanding the real issue, and then your solution can be different from your competitors. It can be different, and it's going to be okay either way. It doesn't matter which side you're picking as long as you can explain why you are doing it. And by understanding it, you can explain why. And from a consumer perspective, I would say try to understand that these ratings are not, it's just a checklist. It's just an instrument that can help you pick the right product or to inform you about the things they're looking at. But it's broader than just the checklist. And it doesn't per se mean that it's good or bad. Again, it's about understanding what you're looking at. And if to you, for example, the welfare of animals is important, look for that. But is it to you that you really value nature? Then look at that aspect. Because there are rarely products that have everything. Like we have to make choices. And it's just by understanding it.
Okay, and Marcel, do you have anything to add on this?
Yeah. If we because it's about polarities, right? So if we want to have less polarities in the world, I think we have to. Then that's a big issue. It's not, it's not about companies or smaller communities, or because those, it's very difficult to add up all those different companies and things like that. They all have different goals. They're mostly financial goals, of course. It's more of a moral issue, and if we could go there, if we can change being good as a world citizen, and not a European point of view or an Indian point of view, but just as a person, just as a human being in this world, if we could have a small change over there at the top of everything, that would be grand. I don't know how to do that. Is that religion? Do we need to have a new religion? and saying, helping people to be good, or what is it? Is it through the financial system? So is it the banking society, Renée? You guys changing the world, because the world is around finance. So I'm trying to find what of those big keys which you can use to change from a worldwide point of view how people judge themselves being okay, because I think that's where the problem is. It's I think everybody tries to be the best as they can, from our point of view, from a Western point of view, and not all, because I know about this. When it comes to palm oil and deforestation, only 50% of the Dutch community, is sensitive for this issue, which means that 50% is not. And that's a lot. So, and it's not only about palm oil; it's about sustainability as a whole. So, there's a lot of work to be done. But if we can, I think we have to try to start somewhere high up, big, instead of doing all those small bits as we are currently doing, because it doesn't go fast enough.
Okay.
Yes, I agree, big, but also as individuals, we can start. That's what we have control over.
No. Of course, we need to do it, because if we don't do it, who will do it? So you're absolutely right. But sometimes I'm a bit pessimistic if we are still on time to change those important issues.
Well,
okay.
you inspired me for sure.
You asked a big question. Do we need a new religion? I like that question. Sorry, Renée.
Someone has to drive the decision, of course. Like someone has to get people to move. But I think in the end, every decision that we're making is based on us being humans and taking care of our families and trying to do the best we can. So I think talking about a new religion, maybe it's just, Marcel, maybe it's just like finding out what is valuable to us as a person and making the right decision, or try to make the right decisions as good as we can through what we value. And maybe the new religion should just be a philosopher once in a while and try to see the same thing different.
Yeah. And be prepared to shift your mindset to a different perspective based on having these conversations.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I come from a town in the south coast of England called Brighton. I don't live there anymore, but that was where I was brought up. And someone did a survey there, the top religions in Brighton. And quite high up the list, I'm not exactly sure where it was in the list, but quite high up in the list was being a Jedi. So but maybe that's not the religion that we need. I don't know. But
well, we can't live on this planet. We're going to have to go somewhere else.
Indeed. Okay. So look, I think that we've had a really good conversation here. I wondered whether if you fancy a 30-second summary, are there any, if you could condense it into a very short period of time, do you have any pearl of wisdom for us? I mean, I suppose if I was to have a pearl of wisdom, is that I get fed up with people wanting simple answers all the time, and that there's never yes or no answers. The press are terrible at that. Do you think this or not? And whereas the reality could be nuanced. Does anyone want to have a go at their 30 seconds of wisdom to finish the show?
Well, I can bounce off your point, which is we need to move from traditional mindsets to understand the nuances of the polarities, the inequalities that we face. And by understanding those complexities, we can come up with exactly the sort of creative solutions that Renée and Marcel have put in practice.
Yeah, I think I can add to that. I think what I dislike about the world today is that we are in a sort of protest mood. Everybody loves to say no instead, and really, emphasizing the differences instead of emphasizing what we have in common, and emphasize the yes. And it's a movement, it goes like 50 years or 60 years, you have the same. So now we are entering a sort of hippie time or whatever. And that at least, it will be more positive, I hope. So that will be a positive vibe instead of all that negativity that is going on in the world.
There's certainly a lot of
that's what I hope.
negativity.
That will solve a lot if people avoid no and go for yes.
Okay. I did like Eric's comment. I did like Eric's comment about education. I think absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
Renée, would you like to? Can I leave you with the final words?
Oh, that's some pressure.
No pressure or anything, but
I think Marcel and Anita gave a pretty nice summary, and I don't really have anything to add to that. I think we had a great conversation about it, and well, I keep my grounds here. It's
all right.
Maybe just embrace the polarities.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Renée's coming back on again, the ESG show, quite soon. I'm going to be talking to Anita about appearing on the ESG show, and of course, Marcel, you will be welcome. But thank you very much, everybody, for watching, and see you all again soon.